Thank you so much for coming to learn about the benefits of plant-based eating. This is something that we are really focusing on this year as part of our food campaign for Green Sanctuary. Food, as you will learn, changing just even the smallest bits of your routine and your habits with your food and your diet can have a huge impact on both the planet and on our bodies. As far as the health of our planet and the health of us. So we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper. This is like a crazy thing. Is this just, it's like, anyways, oops, this is new. So the reason why Green Sanctuary is taking on food is it is, as I said, a way to have an incredible impact, but it's also something that is laid out as very important within the Green Sanctuary program. The ways our societies raise, buy, and consume our food has direct effects on the earth, plants, and animals, and humans who work to make our food available. So this is something that was put out by the UUA as a way to guide the Green Sanctuary programs to possibly look at food. But acknowledging that food, can I turn off that thing? Is this, I don't know. Food choices are complicated, right? There's a lot of things that go into what we purchase for our food, what we think is delicious, what our kids will eat, we have having access to food, what we can afford to buy. And so we want to make sure that people know that this is a zero judgment zone. Nobody is like shaming anyone for how they eat or saying that you have to eat the way that we eat. There are so many things that go into our food choices. And so we're just hoping to provide a little bit of information and some data so that when you can make those choices, okay, am I going to choose food choice A, food choice B? You're going to choose the one that, if you can, is healthier for your body and healthier for the planet. But we definitely want people to know that this is a no judgment zone. We are going to start off with a short video.
I'm a total sucker. Whether it's sugar or grease or carbs, pretty much bring it on. And I spend a lot of time in Montana. So for me, that medium rare grass-fed ribeye steak, pretty much as good as it gets. I know, I don't do it often. And when I do, I gotta admit, I feel a little conflicted. And that's for a lot of reasons, including the planet. But how big of a problem is what I eat? I mean, does it really make much of a dent in something as huge as global warming? It turns out what we put on our plates matters a lot. About 25% of all the global climate change problems we're seeing can be attributed back to the food and the choices that we're actually making about what we eat on a daily basis. This is greater than all the cars on the planet. In fact, it's about twice as much global warming pollution as the cars. Ben Fulton and Maya Almaroz study the connection between climate and diet at the University of California, Davis. They track how the way we produce food creates greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. With that data, the team has crunched the numbers to figure out how much carbon pollution is produced by different foods and different diets.
A lot of people feel really helpless when it comes to climate change, like they can't make a difference. And what our research is showing is that your personal decisions really can have a big impact.
So take that grass-fed ribeye steak I love. If you really look at everything that went into making a single serving of beef, you end up emitting around 330 grams of carbon. That's like driving a car. Now, if I choose to have chicken instead, there's more than a 5-fold drop in emissions. Switch to fish, and you see the number go down even more. Now, look at veggies. If I swapped beef out entirely for lentils, well, I'm down to practically nothing. So why does beef and live food, for that matter, pack such a powerful punch to the planet? Livestock accounts for a little over 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If that sort of seems low to you, consider it's about equal to transportation. We're talking all the cars, trucks, planes, trains, and ships on the planet combined. This is partly because ruminant animals like cows and sheep, they're just gases. And the methane they produce is at least 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Plus, it takes a lot of land, fertilizer, and about 1 billion tons of grain to feed all that livestock.
And you can feed 3.5 billion people with that grain. So we're actually eating these grains ourselves. It would eliminate a lot of the CO2 that's emitted from cattle production.
So it's clear that meat has a pretty big carbon load. But it's also worth remembering that not all livestock is raised equally. In parts of the American West, for instance, ranchers are working to raise livestock in ways that actually help restore the land. And they're experimenting with ways that soil and grasslands can be used to keep carbon pollution out of the air. But even these sustainable ranchers will really tell you we're probably eating too much meat.
I know a lot of people who, if you don't serve them meat for lunch or dinner, they're kind of like, well, when is the meat coming out?
It's to the point now where the U.S. actually has one of the highest meat footprints per capita. So what about not eating meat at all? Vegan is the way to go for the least impact on the planet. But it's not that much different in terms of emissions than, say, a vegetarian diet. And the team found that the environmental impact of the Mediterranean diet is pretty similar to vegan and vegetarian diets. It's a lot less meat-heavy than what Americans are used to. So fish and poultry a few times a week, beef maybe once a month, plenty of plant-based foods, and of course, loads of olive oil.
Eliminating like 90% of your meat intake is more important than eliminating all of your meat. We don't all have to be vegan. We don't all even have to be vegetarian. If we can just reduce our meat intake, every little bit helps. And if you can bring it down a lot, you can help the climate a lot.
If we all just switch to a Mediterranean diet, it could actually solve 15% of global warming pollution by 2050.
If everyone were to move toward it, that is equivalent to taking somewhere around 1 billion cars off of the streets in terms of vehicle emissions each year. So that kind of a footprint is big time.
But say you still want more meat than the Mediterranean diet recommends. Just cutting down your portion size to the doctor-recommended 4 ounces can reduce your emissions by half. That's huge.
In fact, the doctors are telling us we're eating about twice as much meat as we really need for a healthy diet.
The good news is we are listening to our doctors. In the last decade, there's been a 19% drop in the amount of beef we eat.
All these things that you're already being told are good for you also happen to be good for the planet.
So what we eat really is a big part of the climate puzzle. I mean, we may not all be able to afford an electric car or putting solar panels on our house, but we all have to eat every day. And these choices we make can add up to really big numbers. And since meat has a pretty big carbon load, we need to be thoughtful about how much we eat. And so that ribeye steak that I really love, I am honestly trying to cut back. Maybe just a smaller piece of steak, or simply swapping out a meat dish for a veggie burger. It may seem like a small thing, but it really does add up to big impacts. Hey, so what did you have for dinner last night? Find out how your choices are affecting global warming by taking a quiz at climate.universityofcalifornia.edu, or watch one of our other episodes to discover what happened when I brought a box of donuts to MIT.
So if we could just have some of the lights back up, that'd be great. Thank you. So that was, he said it way better than I could. No judgment zone as far as I'm concerned, as far as, are you going to go completely vegan? Are you going to, it said doctor recommended 4 ounces serving size. I think Dr. Janice might have something else to say about that. Depends which doctors you talk to, but we'll see. We are so fortunate to have Dr. Janice with us today. Janice is and her husband Jeff are long-time members of this church. I think you all have seen Janice up there ringing the bells, and Jeff working back in the kitchen feeding us lots of yummy food. And Janice teaches at the UConn Medical School and is the first instructor to include nutrition in the training of the students there in the medical school. Can you believe medical schools don't have nutrition training? Unbelievable, but Dr. Janice is changing that, and we are so happy to have her with us today. So with that, I'll bring you up, and we'll get switched over to your slides. Oh, and let's see. Michael, are we able to change out the slides now?
Jeff preparing something. He's such a chef. Jeff, what is this?
Welcome everyone, I'm Janice Oliveri. Today we can talk about clinical nutrition.
Oh, yeah, don't do that.
No?
I had recorded that for students, so don't put that. I'll just flip through.
You're on.
Yeah. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. And one thing I learned from that video is that patients are listening to doctors. That's kind of a surprise to me, but I'm glad to hear it. So that's great. So yes, it's true. I teach at the school. You can't see it up here. I have no disclosures, meaning I don't get any sponsorship from Impossible Burger or anything like that. So I teach at the school. Learning objectives again.
The cost of chronic disease.
Oh, we gotta stop doing that.
The common
Let me just.
how are changing dietary habits and obesity, a driving chronic disease.
Can you mute it?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
How's that?
So just a quick reason why you hear that. Medical school is very different today. We don't lecture. We record these lectures and they watch them and then they come in and then we discuss. So that everything we do is kind of reverse, and it's a little weird to me, but that's how it is. So anyway, chronic diseases are the leading cause of death and disability in the United States. And as you can see, our life expectancy in America, look how low we are on the, we're 27th, and more recently, we're even lower, right? We have terrible. Dietary risks are the number one risk now for health in this country. People don't think about that, but it's huge. So what's going on? So study, this is 10 years ago now, University of Washington, poor diet and inadequate physical activity are two of the biggest driving forces behind our health. You can see here 90% of type 2 diabetes, 80% of heart disease, 70% of stroke, 70% of colon cancer, 40% of all cancers, and 60% of dementia is preventable. It's a lot, right? And that's why I went into primary care, because I was in medical school and we'd be doing open heart surgeries. You're just a student, and you realize 4 out of 5 open heart surgeries are preventable, but nobody's doing anything about it. It's just it blew me away. So you can see that these are the chronic diseases we're talking about: heart disease, lung disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, kidney disease. And we find one of the biggest drivers is obesity. It's linked to 53 at least diseases. There's a lot of causes of obesity, for sure. It's not just one thing. And so you do have to rule, out meds. A lot of the meds we use can cause it, all kinds of stuff. Psychosocial is a big one. Money, right, the cheap, bad food. But obesity, we're finding, is a big driver. We use body mass index, which is a terrible calculation. It's weight over height squared, and nobody even knows how we came up with that. But it's good for big populations. And you can see here, so normal BMI is 25. It's the end of the green. And this is death, the ratio of death from all causes. And if you're overweight, 20 to 29, your death rate doesn't go up. As soon as you hit, and that's because it's not a good measure. And so muscular people might have a higher BMI. I think Tom Brady is considered overweight, because if you're muscular. But once you hit 30, look at it go up. And when your body mass index is over here, you have the same life expectancy as a smoker. Now, again, when I was in school 30 years ago, we were like, well, the fat cells just store fat. This is how we do it. We learned all the biochemistry of that, and that was it. But we're finding that's not true. Fat cells produce all kinds of hormones and mediators and cytokines that are very inflammatory. And not all fat is the same. It's the visceral gut fat that's the worst fat, very different. You've probably heard of brown fat. There's visceral fat, there's white fat, there's actually beige fat, and some new studies show there's something called pink fat. They all work differently. But it's that visceral fat that's very inflammatory. So in this big 35-year study, 35 years, so that's a really good study, they found that there were 5 things: exercise, smoking, diet, alcohol use, and body weight. And if you had those 5 things under control, you had a 60% reduction in dementia, diabetes, heart disease, and stroke fell by 70%, and a 35% reduction in cancer. And I bring that up because notice that diet and body weight are 2 separate things. Because you could have a normal body weight but a bad diet and not do nearly as well. They're separate. And that's what we call TOFI, or thin on the outside, fat on the inside, right? So you can look thin, but if you've got that visceral fat, then you're not as healthy, because some people genetically, and I'm one of them, have the thin arms and legs, but they're not putting fat in those places. They're putting it in the gut. And after a while, there's no more room just in the tissue. So it actually starts depositing in the liver, around the kidneys, literally squeezing organs. So you've probably heard of fatty liver. We have so many patients now with fatty liver. It's dangerous. So just because you're thin doesn't mean you can eat what you want. And most people don't like anything I have to say. So I'm just telling you that. So, anyway. So this is another problem. This is just the 1970s. Obesity rates are going through the roof. It's really, really scary. And we see direct relationships between obesity and diabetes. Again, cancer, look at obesity as the second highest risk for cancer. Not all cancers, it's not going to save you from glioblastoma of the brain, but our big cancers are actually related. These are the cancers that are associated with obesity, and some of the big ones, like I said, breast, ovarian even, pancreatic, colon is a big one. Prostate cancer, we're seeing changes for sure. So the data is, increasing every day. Whoops, what was here? Oh, breast cancer. Not only food with breast cancer, alcohol with breast cancer. There's a very significant link to alcohol, even small amounts. But, the alcohol lobby is very powerful. The AMA has been trying to get warning labels on alcohol. Forget it. I mean, can't do it. So that's that. Whoops. Knee replacements, even that. 200,000 knee replacements a year at $60,000 a pop related to obesity. So what's causing this rise? You can see even from 2007, because everyone's like, oh, it's genetic, it runs in my family. Well, it's not genetic since 2007. That's not the biggest problem. So our diet has changed, and that's the biggest thing. I love this. In 1900, America was the healthiest of all 93 civilized countries. The Italian-American diet in 1900 was the most healthy diet, right? They were poor. They ate lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. They couldn't afford meat. That was the healthiest diet. And now we have Joey Garlics, and not the same, right? So let me go back up. You can see I'm not too savvy with the technology. But eating out, that's the other thing. We eat out way more often than ever before. You can see the rates. And everyone's like, oh, but I don't eat fast food. Fine dining is no better, sorry. They're full of oils and butters and salt. It's not better. I mean, you could find things that are better, but as a whole, they're not better. And the processed food, that's the other big thing that we never used to have. That came out of World War II, actually, for food for the soldiers. And then we just kept doing it. So you can see here, 63% now of the US diet is processed food. 63%. And then if you look at Europe, look at France and Spain and Italy, it's in the teens, right? So that is a huge difference. So the ultra-processed foods, even sugary cereals and frozen dinners, the luncheon meats, these are related to us becoming obese in part because it displaces the good stuff. Why did they process it? So it has shelf life. So to have long shelf life, you have to take out all the good stuff. And that's one of the big reasons we're seeing this rise. So the brain, we now know that the gut-brain axis is very powerful, and the gut talks to the brain. So if you eat food, and the food industry knows it's called the vanishing calorie. If you eat foods without good nutrients, your gut is saying, well, keep eating. You didn't give me what I need. Keep eating. And the food industry knows that. Sugar, yeah. Sugar used to be a spice. You could see in the 1800s, we ate very little sugar. It was hard to get, right? You got to get it out of the sugar cane, process it. Look at how much we're eating today. And it's in things that look good. Like patients will say to me all the time, well, I just have a yogurt for breakfast and this for lunch, but look at all that added sugar, right? You shouldn't eat more than about 28 grams a day. That little yogurt has what, like 11 or so. It's a lot. Even the plant milks, you got to be careful. They have chocolate soy milk, so it's a lot of sugar. It's in everything. I was at our little cafe. I was getting a salad, and they have the dressings you could just pick. So while I was waiting, I was looking, and the raspberry vinaigrette, it's just a little thing of dressing at 11 grams of sugar. It's like, oh my God. So, and fat. Fat is the other thing. We should not be eating a lot of saturated fat. The average woman should have about 10 grams of saturated fat a day. Man needs about 12. And you can see here, as I said before, we've reduced our butter load because everybody knows butter has a lot of calories. But look at the oil. That's the blue line. So the oils have been going through the roof because, again, the prepared foods and eating out. Oh, let me go back. This is my other favorite slide. So you can see here, this is mortality rate and saturated fat intake. So you can see at the very top, let me just see. This is trans fat. Look at the death rate here. And this is why they banned trans fat from food. But saturated fat, not that far behind, right? And then the plants, you can see, are much lower. Cheese, that's the other thing that's gone up. Everyone tells me, I don't understand why I can't lose weight. I eat such a good diet. And one of my first questions is, how much cheese do you eat? People love cheese because it's fat and salt. They love it, right? And again, look at the consumption just since 1970. It's 100 calories an ounce, right? So if you're a short woman like me and you eat about 1,400 calories a day, you can get 600 calories easily just in some cheese. I told you you weren't going to like it. Right. Chicken. This is the other thing. Chicken certainly has less saturated fat, but look what we've done to the chickens. We've ruined the chickens. It's terrible. And the number one source of cholesterol in the American diet is chicken because we eat so much of it and it's so full of all that fat. So, and these are the good versus the bad fats. Obviously, I think you guys know that already. But the meat, the French fries, the seafood, not the fish so much, but the seafood, not so great. And the processed meats are bad. Oh, protein. This thing is very sensitive. This was alluded to in the video, so I won't say much, but this is the protein consumption. And here's America over here. This is about all you need. This is about how much we get. We are protein obsessed in this country. I even saw it in some water the other day, protein water. Oh my God. All right. So,
how much does one need of protein?
You need about 0.8 grams per kilogram. But that has to be based on your ideal body weight. Your extra fat doesn't need more protein. So that's how you figure it out.
For someone who's 100 pounds.
So, oh God, I do math in my head. The average, like mine, so I'm a little more than that, unfortunately. But I need about 56 grams of protein a day. Yeah.
And for those unfortunate of us on a bit of a more muscular side,
yeah,
which we use it, is it more than 0.8 or 5, 1 gram?
No, because you're eating more calories usually. So,
yeah, okay.
Right, so if you're 0.8 and someone who works out, you would use your total weight, not your ideal weight, because it's probably less than your muscular weight. So, so if your BMI is up to 30, you use your actual weight. Over 30, you use your ideal weight.
So is BMI not the body fat?
Yeah, it's BMI. Mm-hmm. And then this came out. This is a big Harvard study. And this is when I stopped eating, I didn't want to eat meat after seeing this. So this tells us, again, that whole gut bacteria, brain axis, and how they talk and what they do to the body. So when you eat red meat, which has carnitine, I'm just bad at this. Okay, I won't use this. Red meat that has carnitine, and there's choline in dairy and seafood, not fish. Those go to your gut. The bacteria ferment them, and now you're going to increase the population of those particular bacteria because you're feeding them. And it ferments them to something called trimethylamine. This goes into the bloodstream. It gets oxidized in the liver to trimethylamine oxide, and it's very inflammatory. That's what we found. And it's linked to, you can see, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, and about 30% of cancers for sure. So we didn't know these before, this data before. So this is kind of a little scary.
Is it true that when you're testing pain too, that it just leaves you more open to colds?
Oh yeah.
It's
Mm-hmm.
your immune
Absolutely.
system's fighting that.
Right. Yeah, it's related to the immune system as well.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, the immune system is also related to all these inflammatory markers. So if you're obese, if you're eating food that increases inflammation, if you don't sleep 7 hours a night, I'll just throw that in. If you sleep only about 5 hours a night, you have a 42% increased risk of getting a cold from an exposure than someone who sleeps more than 7 hours a night, which is only 17%. So it's not just one thing. So this is just the biomarker too, but they found that the lack of whole grains changes those gut bacteria. So it's important, not just to not eat, one thing, but to add others, and we'll talk about that. So we now know that there's the increase of colon cancer. The risk rises 19% for every daily 25-gram serving of processed meat, which is the equivalent of only one slice of ham, right? So it's a big link for sure. They just banned processed foods, processed meats in school lunches in New York. And California will probably be next. I'm hoping Connecticut will be. We should not be poisoning our children. So, and now France, this is the New York City thing, but I don't know if you saw in the news, France's health authority has just put out health notices telling their people not to eat charcuterie. This is France, right? And the difference is, so in America, we were just saying, our healthcare system is perverse, right? So when somebody gets colon cancer, I make money. And that's horrible, right? But in France, Canada, other socialized health care systems, they don't want you in the hospital. They don't want you to get sick. That chemo costs them money. So that's why France is like, they're considering a ban, although that would probably raise, a revolution. But they have warned people there is a clear link to colon cancer, at least cut down, and they're looking at other ways of doing it. But I was shocked. So if dietary risk is the leading risk factor for death and chronic disease, what are we doing about it? What can we do? What can we add? And now we don't talk so much about calories. We talk more about the quality of the food. So that's what we're finding, and that's what I talk to patients about too. So this was a neat study. So Kevin Hall is a National Institute of Health researcher. He does a lot on diet, and he puts people in the lab. He hooks them up to machines. They make them drink doubled water, deuterium, and they measure it. I mean, it's not like just a little study. He'll keep people in the hospital for 2 months and monitor what they're eating. They must pay them a lot to do that. But this study is interesting. They took the same amount of carbs, protein, all the macronutrients, and let's see, where'd you go here? There we go. And they told patients, eat as much as you want. And one was processed food and one was not processed food. And much to his surprise, the people who ate the unprocessed food, who rated the food similarly tasteful, they ate 500 fewer calories because, again, they're full from the fiber. And they lost weight. You could see at the bottom, the red is the unprocessed. They lost weight, and they were able to maintain it. as opposed to all the processed stuff. So that was a great study, and he's doing more longer studies about that. But it's the same food, same calories, same everything. So what are we not eating? We're not eating enough fruits and vegetables. That's been shown many times. 1 in 10 get the recommended amounts. And how much should you have? Well, we'd say at least 3 cups of veggies and 2 cups of fruits a day would be great. I cannot tell you, I have patients, we were talking last, who tell me they don't like any vegetables. I mean, who doesn't like any? People don't like vegetables, any vegetables. And so, they're obese, they have, high cholesterol, they have fatty liver, they have hypertension, and they're telling me they're not eating any vegetables. I'm like, okay, well, there you go. So low fruit consumption results in more than 1 million deaths from stroke and more than 500,000 deaths from heart disease every year in the world. Low vegetable intake, similar, huge increases in risk. And and there's no benefit if you just add it to a high-fat diet. So that was the other thing. The meat industry put out a study recently that said, we added vegetables to people eating meat and it didn't change anything. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't reduce the meat. Like they just, you can't just mitigate it. You have to get rid of the meat too. So as we said, what type? So once again, in America, the food plate that the government puts out, the people who create that are allowed to be lobbied by the food industry. I mean, I can't even believe that, but it's true. But not in Canada. So Canada, they have to not be lobbied and they have to just use the data. This is what the Canadian government tells its people to eat. They live 4 years longer than we do in Canada. And this is, and you'll see basically what all the data is saying. Plenty of vegetables and fruits, so half the plate, whole grains, and then you can see the protein. They're not big slabs of ribs and burgers. It's a little bit of salmon, a quarter of an egg, mostly beans and legumes, and water for a drink. Oops. Fiber. We don't get enough fiber. That's the other problem. Fiber has both pre and probiotics. Do you know what prebiotics are, what that means? So prebiotics are the food for the bacteria, the probiotic, right? So we want to feed our bacteria too, and then we'll get more of the good bacteria. So we know that it's this complicated slide, but it actually, so you get these short-chain fatty acids that we know are very important in the gut because we're finding all the processed food thins the mucus layer in the gut that protects the lining of the intestine from a lot of the bad things that come through the gut, especially a lot of these preservatives we're finding in food. We didn't think were a problem. But when you don't have that mucus layer, the bacteria are right against the surface of the intestine. And in colon cancer tumors in younger people, we're finding we actually see bacteria in the tumor biopsies. So we're thinking that's transforming. These bad bacteria are transforming because we're seeing colon cancer in younger and younger patients. Whoops. So you can see here, we're supposed to eat about 25 to 35 grams a day for a woman, 35 to 45 for a man. Look what we're eating in America. We might hit 15 grams. It's not enough. And that is very low because when they look at fossilized poop from ancient humans, they can tell that they ate over 150 grams of fiber a day, right? And so we're telling people to eat 25 to 30 and we're only getting 15. Right? So that's important. And whole wheat doesn't mean whole grain. Again, the food industry, I'll look at it and say, oh, this looks good, multi-grain this, and I look at it and there's no fiber, there's no grain. It's like, I don't know how they get away with it, but they do. So you want to look for that whole grain stamp. If they have the stamp, that's helpful, and it will tell you on there the amount per serving, see 8 or 16. And I tell people to aim for 48 grams a day because that's what we're thinking is helpful. So high total dietary fiber intake was linked to a 40% lower risk of coronary heart disease. Another Harvard study, many studies show this. Beans are really important. They're like a magical food, and they kind of stay in your gut for a little longer. It can reduce colon cancer risk, diabetes risk, heart disease risk. They think it's part of what they call the Latin paradox, because people in like Mexico, that's changing with all their processed food and soda, but they tended to be overweight, but they were living longer. And what do they eat in Mexico? A lot of rice and beans. So they're eating a lot of beans, but that's changing too. Well, alcohol. I won't talk too much about this, but we're drinking too much alcohol. It's related to 7 types of cancer, breast in particular, colon. You'll see this in England. We don't see this so much here, but this is, I tell people this at their physical, and most people don't know. They don't even know that it increases risk. And it's not a lot. You don't need a lot. So compared to women who don't drink at all, women who have 3 drinks a week have a 15% higher risk of breast cancer. And the risk goes up with 10% for every additional drink per week, right? So women are working more, they're stressed more, they go to business meetings, they drink more. So it's real. So the American Heart Association, just in 2021, now heart, alcohol, heart, not real. For the first time, this is what the American Heart Association is saying. If you do not drink alcohol, do not start. This is the American Heart Association. So I do want to just go over some research studies. This is not my opinion. This is just the data. But it's really hard to do nutrition studies because people live a long time, and you can't say, okay, for 15 years, I don't want you to eat any of this food, and then we'll see what happens. I mean, it's hard to do that. But they do have some good long-term studies. And this was a JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, studies that we know eating whole grains is lower risk, as I said before, all these different diseases. The DASH diet, I don't know if any of you have been to your doctor. If you have high blood pressure, they'll tell you to eat low salt. The dietary approach is to stop hypertension. That we know not only lowers hypertension, it lowers gout and a whole bunch of other chronic diseases too. And this is just some data about that. I do want to say, so even the DASH diet, they say, 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day if you can get under 2,000 milligrams of sodium. But do you know what the average person needs a day to survive of sodium, right? About 600 milligrams. A teaspoon of salt has 2,400. Wow. Right? Again, salt was hard to come by 10,000 years ago. We don't need that much of it. So this is another study on salt and hypertension. When you keep lowering it, you can see less than 2,300 milligrams a day compared to those who took in 3,600 to 4,800. You had about a 36% decrease in disease. Sugar and heart disease, that's very clear. Sugar is a problem. This was a 15-year study. Even if they got 17 to 21% of their calories from added sugar, they had a 38% higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease compared with those who consumed 8% from added sugar. So 17% of a 2,000 calorie diet, and nobody in here needs 2,000 calories except for Mike Shelby, I think. Nobody needs that. 2,000 calories is a 6-foot-tall football player. So everyone thinks they need 2,000 calories. They don't. But even that, 85 grams a day, and one culotta has 100 grams of added sugar. And the processed meats, I already told you that. You're depressed about that, so we'll keep moving. The Seventh-day Adventists. Do you know about the Seventh-day Adventists? They're a Christian group. They congregate in Loma Linda, California, but there's a group here. I actually did a medical mission with the Seventh-day Adventists years ago, and their religion tells them to be vegetarian, right? So, and at the time I didn't know all this data, but the Seventh-day Adventists live a decade longer than the average American. I don't think God likes them better. I think it's the food. So there have been tons of studies on them, 57 years of studies, right? And they do very well. So they're, like I said, they're vegetarian. They also don't drink. They have good social support. They're out in nature a lot. But the food alone, when you pull out the smoking and all that, I'll show you, this was, okay, so this study is from 1974 to 1988. What the heck? Red meat was associated with colon cancer, heart attack, and diabetes. This is just another, so here, if you're vegetarian, semi-vegetarian, and not there, you do get benefit from the more plant-based you are, but you still get benefit if you're vegetarian. So when they compared it, this was an insurance company, a 21-year-old non-smoking male in good health is expected to live to 80, and the Adventists live to 90. So, Alzheimer's disease, we've seen lots of data about that too. We think, they keep saying, oh, it's these tangles in the brain, it's amyloid, all this stuff. But yet when we have meds that affect that, it doesn't seem to change it. Some of the new data is showing that heme iron is building up in the brain and causing inflammation, which again, you would get from red meat. So everyone says, oh, it's just you're old, you're gonna get it, but it's not inevitable. 60% reduction in Alzheimer's. Not everyone, there are some genetic things that make a difference, but if we could decrease it 60%, that would be great. And this is called the MIND diet out of Rush University. It's, once again, it's basically the Canadian food plate. They found, they tracked people for 10 years, 1,000 seniors. This thing is driving me crazy here. And there was a 53% reduction in Alzheimer's if you followed that diet closely. But a 35%, even if you did it pretty much. I mean, that's extraordinary, right? And this is what's on the MIND diet. Again, all the good stuff, and then get rid of the cheese, sorry, is up there too. Cheese is in the bad aisle. And size, portion size. So any chicken, any of that stuff should not be bigger than the palm of your hand. Most Americans eat 3 times that. Oh, this is just more data, but I'm just going to flip through that. This is interesting. This is unrefined plant food and heart disease and cancer. So you can see the red is the percentage of death from heart disease and cancer, and the green is the percentage of calories from plant foods in the diet. Look at the US. We have some of the least plant food consumption, the green, and one of the highest rates. And as you see it go on to countries that eat more plant-based, they have less and less of that. So those are good types of studies you can do. This came out in February, before the American Heart Association new guidelines came out. I don't know if you know about the Women's Health Initiative study. They've been studying these women since the 1990s. That's where the Stop the Hormone Replacement Therapy data came out of this study. They're still studying them. So they basically have 1.8 million years of data with all these women for all these years. And they found that eating red meat, eating dairy, chicken wasn't as bad, even eggs were bad. So the unprocessed red meat, eggs, or dairy associated with higher risk of cardiovascular disease, egg consumption associated with higher risk of cancer mortality, processed red meat, higher risk of dementia, and so in the yellow at the end there, it said that we need to look at our protein sources when we're making guidelines. And then sure enough, finally the American Heart Association came out with their new guidelines because this data is very clear. So this is the new American Heart Association guidelines. Like I said, I was very proud of them. And they said, choose healthy sources of protein, mostly protein from plants. I mean, that's impressive. So that finally came out. If you do not drink, do not start. And the very last one is also very important. Adhere to these guidelines regardless of where food is prepared. So it's like, well, we're going out to eat tonight. But then you go out another 3 days from then. Then you go to party and eat some more there. And they're saying, no, you really got to, be good. You could do it. I tell patients, pick 6, 8 events a year. So on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I eat more on Thanksgiving Day, but I don't eat it from Thanksgiving until Christmas. Right? That's what people do. So the blue zones. Have any of you heard of the blue zones? Yeah, I love the blue zones. So these are areas in the world where people live the longest. So you could say, well, maybe it's genetic. But if they move before around age 15 to America, they have the same disease risk and death as we do here. So we know it's not that. So what are they eating in these blue zones? If you look, I don't know how much you could see there. Look at the meat, fish, and poultry. All of them are no more than 6%. All of them. So whether it's Okinawa, Japan, or Costa Rica, they're 95 to 100% plant-based, all of them. So what are those things when you put them in a group? And you could see on a daily basis, they're 95 to 100% plant-based, whole grains, beans every day, a little bit of, wine, mostly water. They have nuts every day. On a weekly basis, they only have up to 3 eggs a week, and that's in everything baked. And they're not jumbo eggs like our eggs. Even the eggs here are jumbo, right? But look at how much fish they eat. It's not much. Fish and The fish and the meat, they eat less than 2 ounces of any meat 5 times a month. It's not a lot. And the fish is 3 ounces 3 times a week. It's mostly a flavoring or special occasions. My family in Italy, they live in Isernia, this little area in Abruzzi. My 90-year-old aunt still walks to town every day. And when I went there, I was shocked at how little meat. And this was before all this. We got pizza one night. I was so excited, pizza in Italy. And you each get a little individual pizza that's thin, thin, thin tomatoes. And there were 3 tiny little pieces of buffalo mozzarella. They were so small. And I was like, but that's real pizza. What do we do here? The pizza, it's like 6 inches. We put it in the crust. We put it,
I have a question about that. What do you think the yolks are? Are they still bad?
we think the choline in the whites is still probably not great, but it's certainly better. Yeah.
What's that? What was yours?
The egg whites versus the whole egg. So egg whites are probably better, but again, I wouldn't have 10 of them a week. Yeah. This is more data about the Mediterranean diet and telomere length. So telomeres are the little caps on our DNA. And as we get older, that cap gets smaller and smaller. And people who tend to live longer have thicker, longer telomere caps. And they have actually measured it. And on a real Mediterranean Blue Zones diet, the telomere cap increases. So it actually changes your what we call epigenetics. It's impressive. So, oops, let me go back up. So the gut microbiome, as I talked to you before, like when I was in medical school, I loved microbiome, and I was like, why do we have 100 quadrillion bacteria in and on our body? It's a lot more than human cells, actually. And the gut bacteria weigh about 3 pounds, which is about the same weight as your brain. I kind of like that. And but I remember saying, why do we have all these bacteria? And they were like, I don't know. And I'm like, we knew it did a couple of little things with vitamins, but not much. And we have learned so much in the last 30 years now. So they did this frailty experiment. They put older patients on a Mediterranean diet, and they found that their muscle strength was better, and they had more stamina, and it changed some of their gut bacteria, and they measured that. And just by doing that, I mean, that's just incredible. So it reduced the production of a lot of the inflammatory chemicals, and that's part of it. So lots of benefit. So what to eat? So all studies confirm a whole food plant-based diet, as you've probably figured out already. This is the head of the American College of Cardiology. He's a cardiologist, the head. He's not the head now, he's retired. But I heard him speak once at a thing, and he said this. I mean, that's profound, right? And I was talking earlier, UConn now, Mount Sinai, a lot of the big places have preventive cardiologists now because, 4 out of 5 open heart surgeries are preventable, right? So you don't need to be a vegan, as Katie was saying, any reduction, if you can, somehow get some plant protein in, that would help. This is the mantra: eat real food, not processed, not too much, mostly plants. That will help you. And then climate change and health. So I didn't know exactly what you were going to say. So this is basically that. But the other thing that he didn't say that scares us as physicians is when you clear cut land, you're allowing changes in the ecosystem where viruses and other pathogens have been kept at bay. And we really worry about that. And if you see, even in Siberia now, the permafrost is melting. They're finding all these viruses in the permafrost. It's scary. So we really, should be thinking about that, not only for the planet, but for our own health. We think that pollution is increasing rates of lung cancer in non-smokers, kids with asthma, the bad water in other places in the world. We're pretty lucky here. We clean our water, but all kinds of infectious diseases. It's profound. And the American College of Physicians, which I'm a member, believes that we need to engage in environmentally sustainable practices that reduce carbon emissions, support efforts to mitigate the effects of climate change, and educate others. This is our duty, which is one reason I'm here. And this they talked about in the video, how the cows produce lots of methane. A farm with 2,500 dairy cows produces the same amount of waste as a city of 411,000 people, all right? So, and this is some more stuff. The fish, I do want to talk a little bit about the fish. So we eat fish because of the omega-3s, right? Where do fish get the omega-3? Do they make the omega-3? Do you know? Fish get the omega-3 from the algae they eat. So then we farm fish and we give them pellets of corn or whatever we give them. So the farm fish don't even have as much omega-3s as, so you're really not even getting the benefit from that. And it's again, as I've said, they've ruined our food. And plus all the mercury and other pollutants. If you go fishing here in our rivers, there are signs everywhere, don't eat the fish, because of all the pollutants. It's sad. So this just saying the same thing. So if you just ate one meal a week as meat-free, look what you could save. I mean, so little changes. Oh, this is the CO2 production based on the food, and you can see lamb and beef are at the top, and all the plant-based stuff is pretty down low. They already talked about this in the video about all the land that is taken up, but so I won't talk about that. So if the entire US did not eat meat or cheese for just one day a week, it would be the equivalent of taking 7.6 million cars off the road. That's one day. Oops. So in summary, the science is clear and abundant that eating a whole food plant-based diet is good for you and the planet. And one thing I like to say too, because I love when patients say, well, my grandmother lived to 100 and all she had was bacon and drank beer, right? So, these are big studies, but it's my careful driver kind of, metaphor. Just because you're a careful driver doesn't mean you're not going to get killed in a car accident, right? But your risk of dying as a careful driver is much lower than someone who is a risky driver. And that's what we're talking about. Be a careful eater. And it definitely should improve your health. I was going to print resources for food and all that, but I thought that's not very sustainable to have papers. So if you want information, if you want to leave your email, I'll send you food. Jeff has a good cookbook of recipes we eat that's really good, and I can give you all that data. And that's it. Thank you very much. Oh, any questions you want to do? Yeah, it's up to you.
People want to stay for Q&A? People have questions?
Any questions?
I want to tell everybody about some of the things we have coming up, but I can do it after Q&A. Or
whatever.
Let me tell you about a couple things coming up. So in case people have to scoot, that. And then if you want to stay, I think we're scheduled to go till 1. So we can stay and chat. We can have snacks that are set up back here. If you could quickly switch back to the other presentation. So while we're doing that, I just want to thank the folks who brought food. Jeff Tyler brought some food, and Linda, there you are back there, Linda Scacco, Steve Leben, who had to go, Doreen Linton, and Barbara Arian. Thank you so much for bringing in the snacks that we're enjoying today. So please, they worked hard to bring these things. Please eat them. Make sure that we don't have full plates of food, because food waste is a whole different topic that we'll talk about at some point. So as soon as we get, I have one more pretty slide that I worked so hard on, so I want to make sure I show it.
You will.
But as I said, this is part of an ongoing campaign that Green Sanctuary is doing around food, and that was amazing information about the health benefits for us. And so, like, it's such a win-win-win, right? You're winning for yourself, you're winning for the planet, you're winning the economic and the social justice issues around food, just layer on so many more things that just make so much sense. So coming up with Green Sanctuary, February 13th, we are partnering with IREJN, which is the Interreligious Eco-Justice Network, they are doing an event. It's at the other Universalist Church, I believe, in West Hartford, but it's also going to be online, and it's about legislation coming up, having to do with environmental issues and mostly energy, I believe.
And then you hear also that waste issue that we're having here in Connecticut. Where does our waste go? Can't we take some of our foods out of the waste?
Right. And there'll be some advocacy training involved in that session as well. So if you really want to learn what's happening this year in the legislature and how you can make a difference through advocacy, that's coming up on February 13th, both in person and online. February 24th, we are figuring out the details soon, but now we know a lot about what not to eat, but you might be still like, well, all right, I look at my fridge and I still don't know what to cook, right? So the next step of this conversation is, what can I eat that's delicious, easy to prepare, everyone's going to love it. That's going to be on February 24th, and we're going to do it here. It's going to be a little bit more of like a demo than a participatory cooking class, because we can't actually use the kitchen to cook, but you're going to learn some easy techniques, how to prepare really healthy, delicious, plant-based meals, and then we get to eat it. So that's super fun. That'll be on a Friday night. Coming up in March, is Christian still here?
No, he can't be.
Oh, he had to scoot. That's Christian. He came to church here today, so we're trying to like loop them in as like, members of our church. But he runs an organization called Levo, and they work with folks in Hartford, people in Hartford, to grow food, vegetables through hydroponics, and then that food is available through a CSA. So we would love to work with him to promote the CSA here with our church membership, and if we get 10 people to sign up for the CSA, we can be a distribution spot where you just come and pick it up here, and you get your vegetables like any other kind of CSA. We'll have some information coming up about how you can sign up for that, or you can certainly sign up on the Levo website at any time. But he's going to come in and do a demo about hydroponics, which is super cool. And then also coming up this spring, we're going to be promoting composting either at home or with Blue Earth. We're participating in a West Hartford program where you can get compost bin for your backyard for half price. You don't have to live in West Hartford to participate. And if you can't compost in your backyard, or you just don't want to, we're advising people to sign up with Blue Earth. And they come and they pick up your food waste, and they will take it and compost it at their place. And then you can also have the finished product of that. Did I miss anything?
Well, we are going to be announcing our energy work, but we're not going to do it today.
Exactly. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. That's another campaign. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Janice for some Q&A.
Oh.
We can put the lights on and turn off the cursor.
You're pushing it.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm looking for dogs and helping more with the vegan diet. Do you know anybody, or are you like?
Except for me? Yeah. I am not taking your patients. I do think I'm at UConn, and I do think more and more docs. I mean, all the docs pretty much this way. It's just the problem is time. We don't have time so much to talk to patients. But I think UConn is probably the most progressive because we get a slightly longer appointment time than anywhere else. We do have some docs taking patients that are definitely interested in plant-based. Yeah,
Set me up with someone or.
Yeah, just
And I'm gonna
actually.
also have some information about a nurse
Okay.
who lives nearby, who is going into this profession as a coach.
Yeah, the health
Like a
coaches are
nutrition
great.
coach. So
Yeah.
I'll have more information as those cards come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Something about diet, stuff like diet drinks versus regular stuff, something like that.
Yeah, so the artificial sweeteners are really interesting, and they are not great. Again, the reason, except for a little stevia seems okay, and erythritol seems okay. Erythritol is related to mannitol, and those are, we use those for like brain swelling. We think it decreases inflammation, but all the others, we're finding they disrupt the gut bacteria. And it changes the way we deal with sugar. So initially your sugar looks lower, like if you're diabetic, but over 3 months, it doesn't seem to change your average sugar. So they're not great. You should limit those two.
Is that also true of like a Swerve product, which is a sugar replacement for thing?
I don't, what's in this?
Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what's in.
Can you repeat the question?
She was saying, is that the same as the Swerve products? But I don't know.
you know, granular sugar replacement.
Yeah, I don't know what it's made of.
I have a question about calcium. What do you recommend getting, how do you get enough calcium in your diet with plant-based?
Yeah, well, everyone, the recommended, calcium is a funny thing because we're finding now calcium is not so good for you, increases coronary calcification. So if you're postmenopausal, we recommend like up to 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day, but no more than that. And there are plenty of foods that you can eat. Broccoli has a lot of calcium. For some strange reason, English muffin has calcium. And, but I take, 400 milligrams of calcium. I don't take a lot of calcium. Yeah. And you need to take B12. There are other couple of little things you should take. But everyone in Connecticut should take vitamin D, a little bit of calcium, and if you eat mostly plant-based, B12.
Thank you.
What do you recommend for people that are gluten sensitive for whole grains?
Yeah, the gluten sensitivity thing is tough to get everything you need. Yeah, so at least if you could eat like sweet potatoes and things that are high fiber vegetables, at least you're getting vegetables that way. But the whole grains, because you don't have too many options. I think I'm not so up on that amaranth, or there are some, not the amaranth, but there are a couple that you can eat.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, it's tough. It's tougher.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Janice, I know that berries are really good for you.
Yeah.
My problem is I've been to a couple of grocery stores and those berries last maybe a day.
Mm.
Can you get the same benefit from frozen ones?
Absolutely. Frozen is good. Yeah. Frozen is fine.
Did you say you had a cookbook you might recommend?
Yeah, Jeff, my husband, has compiled the foods that we like. So if you leave your emails, I can send that out to you.
I know there's a lot of, even within the plant food community, there's always differences of opinion. And have you must have heard about lectin proteins, which cause inflammation in the gut and things. And there are some people who tell you not to eat grains, not to eat beans. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy, and it's not based on any data. It's true there's some lectins in beans, but when you cook them, it's not an issue. Yeah, I think that's another person trying to sell a book.
Okay.
Anything else? Yeah.
One of the things I have a lot of trouble with is trying to figure out not just what plants to or recipes are available, but how do I balance my diet to make sure I get, like, over a week's menu, enough protein or whatever, or the right variety of mix of things, other than just try to eat a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Because recipe books are great, but am I balancing it out to get it balanced?
So I think in the kind of old days, it's like you had to eat the beans and rice and cornbread to get the complete protein in one meal. And that's not true. The body is very good as long as you get it throughout the day or a couple of days. It's fine. There's some great websites, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which I'm also a member of. They have tons of information about that. But as I said, because we think we need more protein than we do, people really do get, what you need. When you don't have enough protein in your blood, you get swollen ankles and stuff. No plant eaters are walking around with swollen ankles from that, like we get what we need. But yeah, it'll show you, they have the 21-day vegan starter kit. They have a section for athletes, especially growing athletes would need more. But it's pretty easy to get it. Like just an example. So like for me, I like Ezekiel muffins. There's no added sugar. That and some almond butter for breakfast. That alone gives me 15 grams of protein, and I drink like an oat flax milk that has 8 grams in a cup. So already I have over 20 grams of protein just for breakfast. I mean, it's pretty easy.
What was the name of that website, Jim?
Oh, the PCRM, I think it's .org, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. They do a lot of climate stuff too, and not, using animals for studies. But they have great stuff. And again, all evidence-based. There's another one called nutritionfacts.org, which is great because it's only like a couple of minutes. He has my fantasy job. He's a doctor. He taught at Cornell, but now he just does this. He combs all the literature, and then he gives you the summary of what it says, and if it's a good study or not, all about nutrition. So it's great. It's really informative, and it doesn't take long. So, but yeah, it's a good question. Anything else? Yeah.
The presentation that you gave on the PowerPoint, I was unable to convince my carnivorous husband to come with me today.
Yeah.
But I would really like for him to, get that orientation. Is that something that you can email out, or is it not?
I think the PDF I can send. Yeah.
We also have taken a recording of the session, so we will be putting it on our YouTube channel.
Oh,
We
okay.
have all the other presentation events that we had in last year.
Oh, great. That's great.
Well, and my advice for that is there's something that he's concerned about. Like my patients, my father died of diabetes, my brother has diabetes. Okay, great. You don't want diabetes. So that's something that's important to them, and you can go there. There's something important that he wants to do, or more energy, or lose weight, or decrease his blood pressure, or whatever. But even just showing him the American Heart Association guidelines, I mean, that's pretty clear. Yeah, but it's tough.
Yeah, I tried to make the switch from vegetarianism to veganism in November. Had much to try it. But it was much harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much of my diet was dairy and cheese-based.
Yeah, it is. It's that cheese. We have plenty of vegetarians who have heart disease because of this.
It was a lot harder than I thought, but I still wanted to.
And we get addicted to it. There are casomorphins in the brain.
But after you're away from the cheese for a while, you don't crave it anymore.
I think just doing those little switches, I just switched. I was trying to do no dairy for other issues, like I was just having digestive issues. I'm like, let's try no dairy, and I found I really love vanilla oat milk in my coffee. It probably has a lot of sugar. I haven't checked the sugar content, but it's just delicious.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that I need to go back to creamer.
And again, if it's a little bit, as opposed to, you have people. I have patients drinking. I have one patient who drinks a gallon of whole milk a day. A gallon, and it comes in because I don't think you can see it on there, but I'm also board certified in obesity medicine, so I get all these consults.
And I'm like, a gallon? Who's time to drink a gallon of milk? You know, they get addicted to it. And it's high fat. So I said, can we cut down to a glass at each meal? You know, so again, you're still making progress. It's where you are and your, you know, little changes. So you may not have to get rid of, you know, we get 28 grams of added sugar a day. If that's your added sugar, as long as you kind of count. It's the only thing I make patients count is their added sugar, because it's shocking how it's in everything. So I have them look at that.
You mentioned 2 sites, PCRN.org, and what was the other?
Nutrition facts. Yeah.
Nutrition, what?
Facts.
And we'll try to, if we put the presentation up, we'll try to put some resources. You said you had some resources to share as well.
Yeah, okay.
So, and we also have some signups up front. Anybody who signed up already to come, will email out information about where you can, you know, get the resources.
Was that the thing on the wall?
It's out there, but now, well, it was out there, but now it's up here.
Oh.
And we can still do more questions and things as long as I'm talking and I keep talking. And then you can also sign up for any of those other programs that are coming up here. And we'll just keep sending you information.
Good. And Blue Zones has a great website, tons of free recipes,
Blue
delicious recipes. Bluezones.com.
Like the things that they recommend that you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.